Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Data Playbook. I want to start off by wishing everybody a happy Thanksgiving as we enter our Week 13 Thursday games. And I just want to make a note that I made a few changes, and if you follow along, you'll notice those changes. But if you don't, then go ahead and subscribe, because then you can follow along to the evolution of the tool. But enough of that, let's get into our data for this game. And starting off the day, we have a classic divisional rivalry with Green Bay going to Detroit, where Detroit's favored on the money line with a spread of 2.5 and a total line of 48.5. And then here's your team's seasonal averages. And then looking at their rankings, you have Green Bay with about an average offense here, with their passing rank at 16, rushing rank at 15, scoring rank at 13, and a pretty good defense here with an allowed passing rank of 5 and an allowed rushing rank of 6. They also have an allowed scoring rank of 5. With Detroit, they have a pretty good offense here, with the scoring rank of 2, so they're the second best in the league at scoring, and then their passing rank of 10, which is still top third in the league, and a rushing rank of 3. Defensively, they're about average, with an allowed passing rank of 16, allowed rushing rank of 11, and an allowed scoring rank of 12. Looking at our quarterbacks, you have Jordan Love and Jared Goff. Love averaging 15.6 fantasy points per game, and Goff averaging 17.4. Jordan Love with 3 interceptions and 2 fumbles lost due to sacks, and Goff has 5 interceptions and 2 fumbles lost due to sacks as well. So I'll just going to flash up their averages here if you need that, or their week by week. But the thing that I changed and moved over was now that I have these charts for them. So it makes it easier to see these rushing and carry yards, as well as seeing if they trend a little differently. These need some work. I just kind of threw these in because this is how I kind of wanted it to look eventually. And maybe if I can throw in some more charts, we'll see how this all works out. But sometimes this can be kind of hard to read, so I'll clean this up over time. But this is the idea behind it. The one other identifier in here, though, that helps is that the very thick line. The other ones are a little thinner, but the thick line equates to the current person that we're looking at. So with Jordan Love, he gets about 12% of the team's rushing carry share and about 13.7% of the rushing yard share. And we can see that's pretty low overall. And then with Jared Goff, we know it's still very small, and unfortunately those still have trouble showing up here and there when it's popped out like that. And next up with the running backs, you have Josh Jacobs and Jamar Gibbs, with Josh Jacobs averaging 18 fantasy points per game, and Jamar Gibbs right about 23.5. No turnovers to note, and then there's our averages for a few seconds. And then we'll flip over to the charts, where we see that Josh Jacobs gets about 56.9% of the carries, and 55.6% of the team's rushing yards. And then with Gibbs, you get just under 55% of the rushing carries and 64.1% of the rushing yard share. And then, of course, with Detroit, I always like to bring up David Montgomery just to see, since he goes hand in hand with 10.6 average fantasy points per game and 1 rushing fumble this season. And a quick glimpse at his averages. And then we can see the opposite part of this pie with 40.7% of the team's rushing carry share and 34.4% of the team's rushing yard share. Getting into the receivers, we have Christian Watson and Amon-Ra St. Brown, with Watson averaging 11.5 fantasy points per game, and Amon-Ra just short of 20 fantasy points per game. No notable turnovers, and then there's our averages with their weekly breakdowns. And then looking at their share for the team, with Christian Watson getting about 8.9% of the team's target share and 12.7% of the receiving yard share. And then Amon-Ra gets about 32.7% of the team's target share and 32.7% of the team's receiving yard share. You can see with Christian Watson how he's had a few weeks, and some of this probably needs to be fixed, so you can see which weeks he was actually in. It looks like it's all aggregated. And then we can see clearly with Amon-Ra usually getting about the top of anybody else on the team. Next up, we have Romeo Doubs and Jameson Williams as the number 2 receivers, with Doubs averaging 10.8 fantasy points per game, and Williams averaging 10.7. There's our average data with no other turnovers. So now we'll look at the charts, with Doubs getting about 25% of the target share, and 23.4% of the team's receiving yard share. This does seem to make Doubs about the largest of anybody else on the team. And with Jameson getting about 16.2% of the team's target share and 20.7% of the team's receiving yard share. And then lastly, with our tight ends, we have John Fitzpatrick and Brock Wright, with Tucker Kraft out and Sam Laporta also out. Fitzpatrick only getting about 2.4 fantasy points per game, Brock Wright only about 4.6. There's their averages and then their data with no notable turnovers. And with their charts, Fitzpatrick doesn't even have enough to be out here to really see anything. And Brock Wright has about 6.7% of the team's target share now, and about 4% of the receiving yard share, maybe growing just a little bit over this last week. So there's all your data for this divisional game. This should be an interesting one with some opposites going on, with a very strong defense from Green Bay and a pretty strong offense from Detroit. And then you also have about an average defense from Detroit and about an average offense from Green Bay. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see with this rushing rank of 3 and that dynamic duo with Detroit against this allowed rushing rank of 6. That might be the biggest part. If Green Bay can really put the stop to the rushing game, then they might have a real strong chance at winning this game. But if they can't do that, then I think Detroit probably wins this game. Even though they still have a pretty strong passing rank, it's just not as strong. So, with Detroit on Thanksgiving Day, you want to lean towards Detroit. But if Green Bay has a strong running defense, then they probably end up winning this game. So I guess we'll just have to see which way it goes. So there's all your information for that game. I hope that you enjoyed. And if you did, leave a like and subscribe. And otherwise, leave a comment on what you think of the new updates. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you for the next game.